Hello and many thanks for joining us on the program today. I am Imonia Marere. Oil spillage in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria is a recurring dexima which has defied solutions and measures aimed at stemming the tide. This has left the region in an environmental mess with devastating consequences for the ecosystem, the health, and the livelihoods of the people. In early November 2021, there was a report of an oil blowout in a wellhead in the Santa Barbara South oil field in Nembe local government area of Bayelsa State. Known as OML-29, the non-producing wellhead is jointly operated by the NNPC and ITO, one of Nigeria's biggest indigenous oil exploration and production companies. There are disagreements as to when the spill started. While the locals of the area insist that the wellhead started spewing crude oil on November 1, the oil company and government regulatory agencies say the blowout happened on November the 5th. But whichever was the case, it took well over 1 month to bring the devastating spill under control, by which time it had wrought serious and extensive environmental damage to the surrounding communities, most of which depend on the aquatic culture for their daily economic livelihoods. Beyond that, the spill was also created health challenges for people, even far from the immediate scene of the spill. Experts in the petroleum industry have said that the Nembe spill was one of the worst in recent years in Nigeria. It is still undetermined and unknown even after a joint investigation team carried out an assessment the volume of crude oil that was spilled during the over 1 month period of the leak. What is, however, very certain is that it cost Nigeria serious economic adversity and disrupted the lives of residents of the area in unquantifiable terms. There is also a dispute between the oil company and government regulatory agencies on the one hand, and the Bayelsa state government and the local communities on the other hand, as to the cause of the leak. Was it sabotage or third-party interference, as claimed by the government agencies and the operator oil company? Or was it a system failure, that is, equipment collapse, resulting from what the Bayelsa state government calls reckless and irresponsible oil feed practices, which are condoned by a weak and or compromised regulatory system? Whatever it is, this latest spill in OML-29 brings to 3 such incidents since the 2018 and 2019 leakages in Nembe. Now, as with previous ones, it appears there were no safeguards against reoccurrence or even meaningful efforts at remediation of the environment. Some other questions that arise are, why did it take over a month to stop the leak for a country whose economy depends majorly on oil revenue? Who should be responsible for the economic adversity still being suffered by the impacted host communities? Who determines the level of air, water, and land pollution which each spill like this one, when this happens? And what level of acceptable remediation is required? Well, these are the issues we will be looking at on the program today, and I'm being joined by 3 experts in their different fields in the oil industry. We will be looking at this right after this timeout. Stay with us. All right, time now to meet our guest analysts who are right here in the studio with me, 3 of them. First, from my immediate left is Nimibofa Collins Degi. He is a biochemist and he is also the vice president of the Nembe Youth Federation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir. It's been my pleasure.
Degi. Also joining us is engineer Dr. Okurohoboye Itua. He is a senior lecturer in the Department of Civil Engineering in the Federal University Otuoke in Bayelsa State. Thank you so much
having me.
For joining us.
Thank you.
We're also joined by engineer Eli Digiene Ni Goodluck. He's a lecturer in the Department of Petroleum and Gas Engineering at the Federal University Otuoke. Thank you so much for joining us. I should add that both Dr. Itua and Engineer Goodluck are also community representatives of the Nembe community in the joint venture JIV, they call it. That's the Joint Investigation Visit. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Let's begin with you, Mr. Dr. Itua.
Yeah.
Right. So many questions have been asked about this particular incident, which is considered one of the worst in recent years. There was the 2018 blowout. There was also the 2019, and all of it in the Nembe area.
Yeah.
Why is it always reoccurring? Why? What do you think is responsible for what happens in Nembe almost every year? Apart from 2020 and 2021, we had one in 2018 and 2019, and now, in fact, 2021. So it's almost a yearly occurrence in the past 3-4 years.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think I'll just go straight to the question. You see, after the divestment of the OML 29 oil mining license 29, which has actually about 11 oil fields in that area, there was no immediate action taken by the ITU that assumed responsibility of these oil fields. When you are sold a thing, the proper thing for you to do is to take advisement on how well the facilities you are taking over are faring over time. And what you need to do is to take this advisement and investigate these facilities and take proper maintenance culture. Why this reoccurrence is that ITU failed to take appropriate maintenance program to reevaluate these assets that they had taken over.
Are you saying, Ife, that while that facility was owned by Share, which of course divested its interest
Right.
and sold it to ITO, right, that during that period,
right,
there wasn't any form of blowout, any leakages?
As at the time the divestment took place, 2013, 2014, what we know is that there might be incidences of that nature, which at the immediate time I'm not aware of. But from that 2014, 2015, when this divestment actually was actualized, from that time to 2019, when we experienced the first incidence of a threat to blow out, all right, which actually the regulatory bodies affirmed that is equipment failure. Until then, 2021, this huge blowout actually happened. The there was no documentary evidence from ITU or documentary evidence as revealed from the regulatory agencies that these facilities were maintained through that period. We have not seen any documentary evidence.
Maybe there was no need to carry out maintenance if the facilities were still okay.
You cannot say a facility will still be okay, especially when you have assumed that it's a non-producing facility. If there are no plugins on that wellhead, there has to be some form of annual checks or as to how these oil wells are faring over time. So there is no question about there was no need.
Okay, Mr. Goodluck, you are the petroleum engineer here, but I'm going to come back to you very quickly. Let me get to Degi, who is a biochemist, but is also a community leader. Give us an idea of what the environment looks like in the Nembe area, that whole area where, as it were, so much of Nigeria's oil resources come from.
Well, thank you very much. The environment, I would say, before the divestment, the environment was well conserved because SPDC imbibed to best international practices. But after the divestment, like Dr. Itwa said, he didn't respond very well, probably because he was away from the kingdom for a very long time. When Shell was managing the facility, there was no oil spillage of that magnitude. Bunkering activities, however, created some leakages from the pipeline and not from the wellhead. That was because Shell was consistently carrying out integrity checks of the wellheads while they were running that facility. As you all know, it is a marine habitat, an aquatic marine habitat, where the livelihood of every common man that lives less than $1 per day is dependent on the fishes in the river. We don't have much arable land to farm. So most of the farming activities are limited to growing of coconut plantations and the rice farming, as per se.
Which require a lot of water.
Which require a lot of water. But since this incident occurred in November 1st, ITO is alleging November 5th because I took the video that went viral on 5th. And on the video, if you check through the details, it is recorded 5th of December. That is why they are alleging that day. But it actually started on the 1st. That video
that I took from a boat?
Yes, I took from a boat. I was the person that took that video. So ever since this blowout came up, the fish farmers can no longer farm. They are in abject poverty, suffering, hunger. As a matter of fact, the king have to coerce ITO, if not of the king order, the first relief sent to the people to ameliorate the harsh living conditions imposed on them by virtue of the blowout wouldn't have been done. The first relief was brought to the Nembe Kingdom on the 13th by Chief Andrew Oru, and it was given. So as you can see, the life dependency is on the river. And because of this blowout, even up till now, the fish yield in the creeks of the Delta within the flow, within the area of the blowout is very, very low. People will have to travel to 12 nautical miles to fish. The only favorable thing, as per se, because this spill affected 46 communities in Nembe local government area in Upunebe Kingdom. It also affected 3 communities in Brass local governments and 1 community in River State, which is Kula, by the coastal lines. So the good thing was that the tidal flow differs in every creek. So that is the environmental factor that aided in cordoning some parts of the local government which were not affected.
So, because I was going to ask you how large this area you are talking about. Talking about 46 communities.
Yes, sir.
In both Nembe and other local governments in the area.
Yes, over 46.
Over 46,
Yes.
and you're talking about people moving over 12 nautical miles to now go. So how large is this expanse that we're looking at?
You know, it's a water body. So I don't know, I'm not a geographer, but I think it should be more than 150 square meters, 150,000 square meters. It's a very vast body of water.
Okay, Engineer Goodluck, as a specialist in this area, an engineer in petroleum and gas engineering, as it were, let us into what you think may have been responsible for these incessant leakages.
Thank you. That is the actual issue. You see, what has caused this spillage to have taken place is no other thing than reactions. Reactions within the well and even outside the well. The wellhead, which is
when you talk about reactions, please break it down,
break it down.
for our understanding.
Yes.
We are not petroleum and gas engineers like you, so we need to understand these terminologies.
What happens is that the crude oil that is contained in the well is of a mixture of some other, we'll call them particles, like the particles from the rock particles, but also sulfur content. There are also water, and then a mixture of the gases. So this oil in the reservoir at the toppermost part contains oil mixed with water called associate gas. Now, because of the mixture, the gas and the oil put together have a very high pressure. The pressure that is coming from this mixture is as a result of the presence of the gas that is making it very high. When there is this mixture, the randomness of the motion of the particles that make up this mixture is so high. I'm talking about the entropy, the change in entropy, the degree of randomness, disorderliness of the particles that make up the liquid, which is the crude oil, and then the gas, the combined, called associate gas. Now, because of the high motion, there is going to be collision. Collision is taking place, so reactions are going on. Now, these particles in the reservoir also react with the metal used to produce this well, the casing. The casing is of iron. So, because the sulfur and oxygen in it interact with the iron, they form sulfate, iron 3 sulfate. That also occurs outside with the salty water, because the water there is permanent hard water. Because the water is permanently hard, it contains calcium sulfate. So the calcium sulfate content there will in turn again release the sulfate ion that will react with the iron externally to form again iron 3 sulfate. So that reaction is taking place both inside and outside, thereby degrading the pipe. So the color of, you can see that with the color of the Christmas tree. You see it's reddish brown, showing the oxidation of the iron from iron 2 to iron 3. That is making the pipe itself to be weak. Now, when this reaction is taking place and collision is taking place according to kinetic theory of gases, of course, you can see a high pressure. He said the kinetic theory of gases states that the particles of the gas are made of in a high motion, random motion, colliding with themselves and the wall of their containing vessel, thereby exerting pressure. That pressure they are exerting, by the time the material cannot withstand it again, it will now break it out. Also, the flanges, there are stoppers there that can also be called gaskets. These stoppers also have worn out over time because it's been there for a long time. So as a result of that, pressure from gas can force it out, and then this leakage can take place. Now, the only way they would have stopped this is by ensuring that they are going there time to time for integrity checkup and test, to carry out some maintenance. You cannot produce or acquire a thing and keep it there without checking on it and expect it to remain the way it is, because nothing remains constant. So over time, these reactions have taken place in the wellhead, and the amount of the crude oil is also increasing. So based on that, there was this shootout. Now, I wouldn't want to go further, but let me just go to another, divert a little. You see, they also claim to have gone to kill this well, that people have caused this sabotage. People have, a third party has interfered, and now they were able to kill the well. But when this spilling was going on, nobody could go close to that place. They could not go close to it because it was not environmental friendly at all. Nobody can go close to it. Now, it was only when the pressure has died down that they decided to now say, let us go in. And then they went there because they knew that people will also see that they were not the one killing the well. They decided to bring in something new, secondary, we call it secondary production, secondary way of recovering oil. The first one is the primary, because about 35% of the crude oil from the well comes out on its own, naturally, with natural pressure. That was the primary production, the one that took place during the spill. And it was coming out by natural pressure. When that pressure dies down, you cannot get crude oil like that until you bring in external force, like water flooding or by gas lift.
To induce it.
To induce, yes. So they brought in water flooding. It was water flooding they used to bring. That's why if you check the video, you find out that the oil that is coming out for them to now say they are claiming to have killed the well was pure, almost of water alone. The percentage was above, percentage of water was above 70. So it was the water they fixed it, they put in there to induce the pressure, so as to get what will make them say they are working. So it was a kind of a drama they were acting there.
So these pipes you talk about, are they surface pipes or are underwater pipes?
Yes, this
and what is the distance that these things cover?
The pipes. I'm talking about the Christmas tree pipe.
Yeah, that's the wellhead.
Yeah, the wellhead.
But there are pipes that carry the crude from the wellhead to other places.
No, it has not started producing. It's not producing well.
Okay.
So everything has been cocked there. But because the pressure is building up, it's also looking for an escape. So when these materials are worn out and they have lost integrity, it will come out. The crude oil will come out of it.
So is there nothing else that can be done to actually, if a well is non-producing, apart from just caulking it, closing it up? Is there nothing else that can be done to safeguard it?
There is something to be done.
And of course that well is in on the sea.
On the sea,
there's also a possibility that boats, even ships, could also ply that route and could cause some damage. Is there anything to indicate that, look, there is a wellhead here and boats and ships should not go near?
Yeah, there was nothing like that, because that was what we were talking about. You see, if you have been going for even the maintenance, the integrity checkup, there would have been also a label showing the last time you have visited, telling the level at which you have find the materials and how far you've gone in maintaining it. Now, in the same vein, you are supposed to also put this labeling to make people to know that it's hazardous to go close to that environment. This labeling will tell us the degree of hazardousness. It will tell us also how unhealthy it is to human health. But there was no labeling like that. But keeping that one apart, what they would have done to avert all these things that we're talking about is putting in place what we call SSSV, subsurface safety valve, for every well that's not producing. You are supposed to, that should be put in place to ensure that even if there will be interference, so to speak, as they claim, nothing would have been able to come out because you have already stopped it at the subsurface with a valve called subsurface safety valve. That safety valve is there for in case of failure. In case of this caulking, there's any failure anyway, the crude will not come out. So the crude oil would have remained where it was. But the company failed to put in that. But if at all they claim to have put it in, then they were not also checking on it, so the thing failed. If the SSSV was there, then what we are saying now wouldn't be coming up. We would not be talking about this. because even if you claim that anybody has come to punch or whatever, nothing will come out of it. So it's negligence on the part of ITO. Thank you.
Dr. Tua, that will take us to this whole argument about whether or not it was third-party interference or sabotage or whatever it is that they call, which the oil company and the federal government regulatory agencies are arguing, and the position of the communities and the Bayelsa state government on the other hand, which says no, this is a system failure. What would make anyone want to go and interfere with a wellhead that is non-producing?
That's a good question. That is the area we are standing firmly. A well is not producing. Why would, or of what purpose, or of what gain will a community youth have to go close to such a well? This well in question is not connected with any pipe. It is directly sitting on the reservoir. That's the explanation the engineer was trying to let you know. And so
So he was not carrying any product
to anywhere.
To anywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like he has said, like the engineer Eli said, had it been, there is subsurface safety valve. From the onset, when ITU feel that it's a non-producing well, and they had installed such a component, we wouldn't have been talking about this failure. And there wouldn't be any question of probably a community youth or whoever approaching such a facility. Just consider it. You can see that the spew of the crude oil and gas comes from both ways. Now think of it. If there is such a pressure that is within such a conduit, like the engineer has explained, if you anyone attempting to release the flange of one sector, you know that there will be gas spewing with force with one side. Then how would you want the same person going to the other end to open up the valve? This is something impossible. I don't know where this fabrication come about, because I can't understand it. That after allowing the gas to spew probably from the left, you still go to the other end to open the flange.
With all the risks involved.
With all the risks involved. It's something I can't, to be honest with you, comprehend. And that what they are saying, the claim they are making, is actually a fabrication from the pit of hell. And to my understanding, I feel that when the incident occurred, that because the good people of this country probably will empathize with this community that is the oil-bearing community, that this devastation has occurred, they had quickly come online to claim that this is sabotage, while there has not been any GIV. How would
no investigation had been done at the time? No
investigation has been taken. Then you go on air. You've not even probably visited the area. Then you go on air to claim that this was a sabotage. It's something that I can't understand, to be honest with you.
Engineer, let me ask this question. Given what you have explained and what Doctor has also talked about, does it require any expertise to carry out a sabotage of that nature, of the nature of what we saw in those pictures? Will it require some expertise to be able to manipulate the wellheads to open up the flanges as is talked about? Or can anybody, just anybody, carry out that kind of sabotage?
Thank you very much. It is not going to be that easy for anyone to just go and carry out that sabotage. Well, if I look at it in the other way around, if we talk about sabotage, number one, you cannot carry out sabotage without having those complete tools, set of tools that can open up those flanges. So, no one went there to do anything. Number two is that if you look at the environment, there are also the naval officers around there from everything, all the implication. So it's not something you just go and spend 20 minutes to do. You have to spend a whole lot of time, and there's no way not be caught by the naval officers. So I also believe that nobody went there to do anything. It was the pressure, internal pressure, from both from the animals and the producing casing that must have caused this leakage. Because you cannot put in flanges. Take for instance, even in the vehicle, we have what called gaskets in vehicle. If you have the gasket using the vehicle for some time, a time will come when this gasket will fail you. There will be leakage of oil, and there will be need for you to change them. In the same vein, this one, that one is even oil, called the lubricating oil that is not even on a high pressure like that. This one high pressure, and you have this kind of flanges with the gasket in between. They will wear out because those gaskets are also made of brittle materials. So they will wear out, and when they wear out, the next thing is for gas to pass. If you keep a cylinder of domestic gas at home with gas in it, without touching it for a very long time, very soon the gas will move away. Before you know it, after maybe 1 year, it starts escaping. So gas cannot be trapped. That is a crude oil well, fine, but it's a gas well too. It contains a mixture of crude oil and gas. The gas there, the crude oil there is called associate gas. It's a combination of gas.
From what I understand, there was even more of gas than crude oil
at the cap
in that wellhead.
Yes.
Yeah, we're right.
So there's a possibility
Yeah,
that
very high
the pressure of the gas may have caused this blowout.
Yes, of course, it was the gas that caused it.
All right, Collins, let's now quickly talk about an aspect of all of this that engineer just mentioned, security in that area. I understand there's the Nigerian Navy, but what other forms of security are available? Does your oil company itself have its own security? Does the community on its own also do some monitoring of these facilities, knowing that they will be the ones that will be directly affected, as has happened in this instance?
Thank you, sir. Well, security-wise, before 2017, 2018, by the administration of the then Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibe Kachuku. Then I think that was the climax of the bunkering activities in the Delta, especially the Nembe, Southern Niger areas of Bayelsa State. So he introduced a mechanism towards engaging and incorporating the community into the security of this natural architecture. So they brought out a surveillance contract and engaged the youth. It was an NNPC ITO joint venture that incorporated part of the community. And there was this aggressive campaign by the indigenous surveillance contractors, because there has been several reports of our fishermen whom are dependent on our coastal regions and the deltaic region for their survival, that these bunkers have messed the creek, and the harvest they normally get is below little and they cannot feed with it. So the campaign was aggressive, and bunkering activities of all nature was brought to the BRS minimum. As I speak to you, Nembe local government have a zero tolerance of bunkering. And most of all these areas where these facilities are sited, are domiciled in, they are accessible by network. So if anything is happening, the indigenous surveillance contractor are paying fishermen for information every month. So once they see anyone tampering with those wellheads, they will call the community or the coordinator of that surveillance outfit. There are about 3 surveillance outfits. Okay, they will call the coordinator to who will in turn call ITO that at so place someone is tampering with a well. But issues of such nature, it's been long, issues of such nature arise. Although some bankers were interested in the Christmas tree, maybe just to vandalize and sell. But this scenario, this issue of this well one is not peculiar to that. Because in 3 nautical miles, there is a naval forward operational base contracted by ITU to maintain watch over this wellhead. So what is the possibility of any vandalist or third party to slip through? And diagonally opposite to the well, there is a fishing settlement owned by Ivory Worikuma. And most of these surveillance workers are there watching over the well. From eyewitness accounts, I gathered that there was a loud explosion on the first, of which even the security agency assigned to ITO confirmed that there was a loud explosion, and they swung into action to know the remote cause of that explosion. On arriving the site of the well, they discovered 3 fishing boats of aged women. So for fear of their safety and for fear that fire might engulf, they have to cordon the area and rescue those fishermen and fisherwomen out of that place, and also tell the inhabitants of that fishing settlement to vacate the place for the sake of fire outbreak. So how possible? Even the testimony of the fishermen, they said they were also scared. So how possible? From all indications, the security architecture, if ITO would be fair to themselves, we have created an enabling and favorable environment for them to operate. And now they are alleging that it is as a result of third-party interference. Okay, how will they dispute the leakages in their flow stations? There are leakages. I believe they are playing those clips now. Leakages in their flow station during our revolution to shut down ITO in November 2020. We went to Odema Creek oil field, which is close to the coastal region, just by the Gulf of Guinea. We observed leakages of various kinds where they use polyethylene papers, pure water sachets to block a leakage in a flow station. It is the impunity of the highest order. And if regulatory agencies like NOSRA and NUPRC are up and doing with their task of auditing these facilities, these landmines of this well one, because there are so many landmines there waiting to explode. Even at that Odema Creek field, oil field, it houses 6 wellheads, and they are only using 2 wells. During the process of this spillage, one was leaking, but they fear that similar incidents might occur, so they rushed down to maintain that wellhead. So me personally, I would say security-wise, we are okay. But the regulatory agencies are not doing their jobs. And ITO, to me, doesn't have the capacity to run the oil mining lease of that Santa Barbara platform. For them to take 38 days in sourcing experts, because when you are running business, there are risks involved, associated risk to that business. During Shell era, they envisage of all these kind of scenarios. So they already have fire stations and other expatriates close to them. So even when such issues of this magnitude arise, the time frame which they use in responding is more quicker.
All right, let's take a short break. When we return, we'll be looking at how this has impacted the local communities in the Nembe area. I understand over 46 communities in both Nembe, Southern Niger, and in fact, in one other community in River State have been impacted severely by this leakage. Stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're still looking at the plight of communities in the Nembe area of Bayelsa State who have been impacted by a leakage, a blowout that lasted for over a month. The environmental degradation and damage, and of course, the impact on the economic and social life of the peoples of the area. Engineer Itua, is there a way of determining how much spillage occurred during this blowout? Because there are figures being bandied around. There are people who were saying over 2 million barrels of crude went out. There are those who say, it could not have been more than possibly 4,000 barrels all through the over 1 month of this blowout. Is there a way of determining this?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you have some meters actually that reads out what goes on within the facility. But in this particular issue, the way to determine the spew from this facility is to apply particle image velocimetry, which is a process of evaluating the particles within the spew. It gives you per milliseconds, all right, the particles that goes out from the system. So you can calculate either the acceleration, the velocity that these particles get out from the body of the wellhead. So with that, you can actually evaluate how much oil it gets out. And that is why we come to, from the image, from what we see from the image, we try to let people know, okay, because of the speed of this spewing gases and the fluid, all right, we evaluated, just, it's an evaluation, all right, an estimation, without measuring, because we don't have such facilities. The oil company is supposed to have things like that, all right, by attaching a meter to probably read out what comes out from the flanges.
The oil company is at liberty to put out any figure it wants. Since it's the only one that has such measurements.
Because such tools are not there.
Yes.
All right? They are at liberty. But if we are examining this process, okay, forensic examination of this process, we will get to know the actual quantity of oil that actually spewed out from this thing. Because we are saying that supposing that you have about 2,000 or 2,000 barrels getting out from that, all right, from the flanges, okay, in a day, how much barrels of oil gets
would
out?
have gone out in
just
over
an
a
estimation
month.
over a month, all right. That is how the valuation of probably up to 2 million or 1-point-something million, we'll say, probably come about. But it will not be far from that figure.
Well, engineer, let's now talk about the level of pollution that this is capable of causing. We're now talking about gas and crude at the same time, being released from that wellhead. And of course, he talked about the tidal wave, or the nature of the tidal wave the other time, how this can easily spread to other communities, to other creeks and all of that. Yes. So in the end, the water is contaminated, the air itself is contaminated, and the adjoining lands are contaminated. How do you measure that?
All right. What happened is when the spill has taken place, like he rightfully mentioned, when you know the volumetric flow rate at which this spill is taking place, and you measure it by the number of days, you're able to know how much volume has come out of the well. Now, when you've known the volume, the next is the velocity of the stream, because this stream has ebbing and tiding velocity. So it is actually traveling. But as it's traveling, the thickness of the oil, like film, is reducing with respect to time and distance. So even at the point where you think it has not reached, it is already there, because the molecular length has reduced to its barest minimum. So beyond the seeing with physical eyes, it's now microscopic. And so as a result of that, it spreads, and the number of days this has happened, it will go as far as every community around that is sharing these water boundaries. Because it is spreading with the water. As the water is moving, it's spreading with the water. As the water is going, it's also going. As water is going, but it will be so much on the part of the spill, because at that region, it is much there, because the whole of the spill is coming out from that region. So the thickness will be high for every person to see. But as it is going with time, it gets to other communities without you being able to see with physical eyes, but they are getting to those areas. The more the days, even up till now, it's still spreading, because the cleanup has not been done, and so it's still spreading, and the water is still moving. The flowing of the water, the tidal motion, is still going on. So as a result of that, every community around that coastal region is being affected.
Now, Dr. Tua, let me come back to you. You are a member of the JIV.
Yeah.
So how come you are unable to agree on the exact cause and the extent of damage that has been caused if the JIV worked as a team?
Right. When the JIV team approached, we shared ourselves into groups. The groups of territory, community, regulatory body, Bayelsa State government group, one at a time, because we don't go in group, like a group of more than 3, as apportioned by ITU. All right. So when we got there was no evidence to show that the valves originally
Were tampered with.
were tampered with. The issue is that ITO and their contractors, they've already clamped or put up a new flange on the wellhead. So there is no way for you to determine that there was a third-party action on it. Now consider it. We asked one of the regulatory agents that were there, that how do you know for sure that it was a sabotage? Did you see into the threadings that hold the flanges? All right. Did you see the sealants, the gaskets, all right, on the platform? And he said, he asked. Now, listen, he was a member of the JIT. He was supposed to, JIV is supposed to be an evidence-based investigation. Now, he was supposed to see this, to be able to affirm, he's an engineer, supposed to be able to see this and affirm to the world that indeed it was a sabotage. But because the flange was already replaced, there was no way for him to see whether there are failures in the threadings that holds the flanges. And now he said he asked from the rep of Kenyon International, and that he told him, he replied to him that the threadings were not tampered. Now, listen, a JIV member, a regulatory agent, is on the site, and he wants a third-party opinion over what he's supposed to have said by himself. All right? How can that be feasible? It is no longer an evidence-based investigation when the forensic evidence to which you claim that is sabotage cannot be verified. So the entire JIV thing is just a caricature, because we went to see a wellhead that has already been replaced.
Okay. Collins, quickly, given the limited time we have left, let's look at efforts and remediation. Is there anything being done right now to do cleanup?
There is nothing being done. due to the disagreements of the stakeholders in the JIV. So perhaps they are opting other options, but there are no efforts in the remediating. But there was, they actually contracted the company that was actually scooping the crude into barges, okay, like containment, trying to contain the spill and preventing excess crude to flow into other parts of the affected
communities. What about any form of assistance to people in the communities who have been impacted economically by this?
From ITO, nothing, apart from the...
What from government?
From government, yes.
Because this is a joint venture between the federal government,
I understand,
with NNPC as the rallying point, and ITO.
We haven't seen NEMA, even visited the site, but SEMA, Bayelsa State Emergency, they actually give relief materials through the intervention of the state government, and they also send medical teams to the affected areas to ascertain the medical conditions of the people there. Let me also bring to your knowledge, although it escapes our knowledge, there was actually a child, an infant, that died as a result of gas poisoning. From the postmortem, we were able to deduce that she died as a result of methane poisoning and was buried. So before I could inform my king of the development, the father, out of frustration, have taken the child to the cemetery and buried the child. So there are still eminent cases of cancer, you know, the aromatic compounds, the benzene of the hydrocarbon is liable of causing mutations in pregnant women if they have contact with the pollutants. And also,
that's a long-term thing that could not manifest almost immediately.
So all those things need to be looked at. The medical condition of the people.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, I want to thank you immensely for finding time to come to look at this issue. It's a very important one because Nigeria's economy is dependent on oil revenue, and it only stands to reason that the communities where this what is referred to as the liquid gold is ripped from should have some proper attention, and of course health issues are there, health issues that do not manifest themselves almost immediately, but in the long term will eventually show themselves. Thank you so much for coming. Nimibofa Collins Degi is a biochemist, and he is the vice president of the Nembe Youth Federation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Niger, for
Engineer Dr. Kuroboye Itua is a senior lecturer in the Department of Civil Engineering at the Federal University, Otuoke. Thank you so much for joining us. He's also a representative of the Nembe in the JIV. Engineer Eli Diegeneni Goodluck is a lecturer in the Department of Petroleum and Gas Engineering, Federal University of in Otuoke, and a member of the Nembe community representative in the JIV. Of course, no wonder he was using all those big terminologies in the petroleum industry, but I'm sure that we did grab some of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Engineer, for coming. That's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.